Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Cover 2 podcast. I'm Jared Smith.
And I'm Nenad.
And we've got an NFL and college football packed show for you guys today. A little bit later on, we're going to get into the college football. It's championship week. All the Power 5 conferences are in their championship games. So within a week, we will find out who the top 4 teams are in the college football playoff. Nick and I will get into that a little bit later. Also, hopefully, if we have time at the end of the show, we've got to talk about the Cleveland Indians, who will no longer be the Indians as they are going to change their nickname. But Nick, they're going to actually keep it for 2021. They just decided to make the announcement right now. We'll get into that a little bit later, a great discussion that we have for you guys. But first, we will start with a review of Week 14 and then a preview of Week 15. But Nick, we have to start with that Monday Night Football game from last night. Who would have thought that the Browns and the Ravens would not only put up like 40 points each, but it would be a back-and-forth affair. Lamar Jackson leaves the game, goes to the locker room, and then miraculously comes back and plays Superman and leads his team to a victory. It was a way more intriguing game than I thought. Just give me your initial thoughts from the game and tell me what you thought from both of these teams.
Well, yeah, normally, Jared, we'd start with something else. Maybe I'd be talking about college basketball, or we'd talk about tennis or something random that we don't normally talk about on the podcast. But this was crazy sports last night. Like, this was insanity. It's funny. Normally, with these Monday Night Football games, you tend to not have the best matchups, right? But once in a while, you have these really good games where there's good storylines coming in, and the game ends up being really good. For this game, you had the storyline of, the Ravens. They had all the COVID issues. They're playing on Wednesday and Tuesday and all this stuff. And this is their first game on a normal night, technically Monday night, a normal football night in the NFL. And you have everybody back for the Ravens right off the COVID list. And you have the Browns, who are surging. And with the Steelers loss that we'll talk about in a second, have a chance to move toward first place in the AFC North, which we never would have thought of. So coming to this game, great storyline. And then, of course, the game itself just surpassed everything. And it reminded me of a Monday Night Football game 2 years ago, Chiefs-Rams. That was a little bit more crazy, but actually you didn't have the storyline of quarterbacks getting hurt and going to the bathroom during the game and all that stuff, or at least we're speculating. Twitter was at least speculating what was going on with Lamar Jackson in this game. This was an even more intriguing game, and I think I've stated it so many times to my friends and even on this podcast, I did miss that Chiefs-Rams game, and I always felt bad, and I felt like I missed an NFL Classic, and I feel like because I watched the game last night and all that insanity and the back-and-forth touchdowns, I feel redeemed a little bit, and I feel like I've now seen a true Monday Night Football Classic. So yeah, no, Jared, it was awesome, right? You can't hate great football. And Lamar Jackson made history on this night. He had the most rushing yards of a quarterback ever on Monday Night Football. I assume it was Michael Vick who had that record. I don't know, but yeah, you had everything in this game. You had key injuries. You had the Superman moment of Lamar Jackson, and you had both teams looking like they're at their best this season. So I want to turn to you, Jared. What were your takeaways? Obviously, the game is crazy itself, but what were your takeaways from the Ravens and the Browns? We had to have a loser in the game. Well, technically, we didn't have to have a loser. There could have been a tie. But really, at least my perspective was that there wasn't a loser in this game. And it showed both these teams have a chance to make the playoffs, and both teams have a chance to make some moves in the playoffs, at least.
Yeah, the good old moral victory, right? You don't get the win in the stat column, but if you're Cleveland, and first of all, let's talk about how Cleveland had fans in the stands, right? Even though I believe it was less than 10,000, or maybe it was around 10,000, they made somewhat of a difference, right? Those fans were making some noise at the end of the game, and it was like weird to hear fans, because most games this year there are just zero fans in the stands. And so even though it wasn't that many fans, it felt like there was like a full crowd there, right? And so I think that was really awesome, to be sitting at home and watching the game and hearing fans. And having the opponent potentially be affected by that, I think was awesome. Cleveland fans, listen, they live off of hope. And so when they came back, I think it got them all riled up again. And it just kind of gave the Cleveland players a little bit of juice and a little bit of life to be able to keep countering back after Baltimore would score. It was like, okay, Baker Mayfield will come back on the field and they would counter what Baltimore was doing. So I loved that there's fans at the game. And really for Cleveland, obviously it sucks. You lost, you're now 9-4, so you're still ahead of Baltimore. And because Pittsburgh has now lost 2 games in a row, this was a more important game for these teams to potentially win the division, right? The division has not been locked up because Pittsburgh, is kind of reeling at the moment. We'll get into that a little bit later. But if you're Cleveland, I think this proves that you can play with the big dogs. Right now, we can sit here and say that Lamar Jackson maybe wasn't 100% for the game, and you can make the case for that. But Cleveland didn't give up, right? The old Cleveland Browns would have thrown in the white towel, right, in the third quarter. They probably would have played a good first half, and then when they realized that Baltimore just keeps coming, keeps punching, and they're not going away, Cleveland would have folded. This Cleveland Browns team did not fold, right? They've got a great 1-2 punch in their backfield with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. And those guys went off. Nick Chubb had 2 rushing touchdowns. Kareem Hunt, I believe, had 1 rushing touchdown and 1 receiving touchdown. So you always have to be wary of those 2 guys coming out of the backfield, right? And then you get Baker Mayfield, who was slinging the ball all around the field today. So I think it was the confidence that we saw from this Cleveland Browns team that I was really excited about and got me to say, wow, this team is good. They are legit, even though they lost. So, nothing to take away from Baltimore. Obviously, Baltimore deserves to win this game, but it was good to see a Cleveland Browns team not fold and play to the very end of the game.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, it was very impressive. And I think a lot of people are looking for the Browns to fail this season because it doesn't make sense. You lose Odell Beckham Jr. and all of a sudden the team is better. That doesn't make football sense that you take your best player out or one of your best players and you end up being better. And what I've now realized is that this Browns team is a legitimate playoff team. Am I going to come out here and say they're a Super Bowl contender? No, because I think there's issues with Baker Mayfield and he just takes too long to throw the ball and there's just a lot of this stuff. And I'm not going to say that a fringe good quarterback is going to be a Super Bowl contender, but this Browns team is a legitimate team this year. And again, they're a few seconds away in that game from leaving a little too much or a little too less time for Lamar Jackson and winning that ball game. It's one of those games where you gave the ball to the better quarterback last and he scored and they made plays. And it was a game where the defenses, it's weird because, again, it's like that Chiefs-Rams game, right? Like, these defenses are good, but these games just end up making, like, nobody can stop anybody, right? And it literally is just momentum, and it's quarterback play, and it's craziness, and it's blitzing, and it's all this stuff. So I don't blame either team's defense because these games are just insane, and you can't really do anything about them. But I think, like I said, I think it was a moral victory for both teams. The Browns, all they could have done was stay in the 5th seed for this game. And for the Ravens, they get the much more needed win because the Ravens, crazy enough, Jared, are actually still not in the playoffs right now. They're in the 8th seed even after that win. So they needed to win that game. The Browns really just needed to not get blown out by the Ravens like they did the first time they played them. And I'm excited to see the Browns and Steelers play again because I think the Browns are a better team and the Steelers are clearly falling down a little bit. And if the Browns are the one, they could have been in a battle for first place there. But nonetheless, moral victory, and I do think that both these teams should make the playoffs. Will they? I don't know because the Ravens just have lost too many games this season, and the Miami Dolphins seem legit as well. And they're behind that team, and they're behind that team based on tiebreaker right now. So you have to have another loss from the Dolphins, or they're not going to make it in. Let's move to the Sunday night game because I mentioned the Steelers name a few times in this podcast already. Steelers Bills, right? This was coming in to be a big time matchup on Sunday Night Football. Everybody was excited about this game, and complete dud from the Steelers. Jared, I'll let you take the reins on this game. What did you see from both teams, and how do you feel about both teams after this Sunday night game?
You know, going into this game, I was like, all right, Steelers lost last week to the Washington football team unexpectedly, right? Steelers at the time were undefeated. It's a home game. It's a Monday game. And not to say that they're going to roll over Washington, but I was expecting the Steelers to come out and insert their dominance in a sense. Yeah. And they didn't. The Washington football team hung in there, right? The entire time their defense kept them in the game. Alex Smith got cleated on his non-injury leg, but literally he was gushing blood, and it was like everyone was freaking out, like, oh my gosh, did he hurt his leg again? What happened? He's a trooper. He stayed in the game. He just literally wrapped it up with tape and was like, put me back out there. And that Washington football team showed a lot of heart, saying that we don't care, that Pittsburgh's undefeated, that this game is in Pittsburgh. It's having to be pushed back on a Monday because of COVID. And they went in there and they said that, Pittsburgh, you guys are beatable, right? And I think Pittsburgh showing in that Monday game against Washington, and then also against Buffalo 2 days ago, is the fact that they seem to lack a little bit of focus right now. I don't know if they're kind of feeling themselves a little bit too much, but the drop passes, right, by Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool, it's unreal. And Mike Tomlin has even called out his team, calling them a JV team, right? Saying if the guys on the field are not catching passes, we will find players to replace them that will catch passes. So Mike Tomlin obviously does not care. He has no problem getting in anyone's face or even through his media interviews, calling out his team and calling out his players. Unfortunately, right now, they have just not responded. And I don't know if they've kind of put themselves in cruise control because they were undefeated and they were on the trajectory of not only potentially becoming one of the first undefeated teams since the 1972 Miami Dolphins, but it was just like, oh, well, we've got this division locked up and we can kind of take our foot off the gas. Well, they better put their foot right back on the gas, because obviously what we saw last night, Baltimore, is still very good. And this Cleveland Browns team can score points as well. So this Steelers team, I would say it's more just a focus thing, more or less, than talent. Because, yes, they have lost some players to injury, just like every other NFL team this season. But I would just say that it's focus. And they're just, I don't know, it is kind of human nature. You know what I mean? When you're rolling, when you've got such a big lead in the division and you're playing so well, at a certain point, you kind of just say, we're playing this team this week, or we're playing the Washington football team this week. They're not as great. And it's just human nature, I think, to maybe not practice as hard, maybe not do that extra rep, maybe not stay after practice an extra half hour or hour and catch balls off the jugs machine. It's like, oh, you know what? I'm going to go home and chill instead. And almost just you just get that sense that that's what this Pittsburgh Steelers football team is. So do you agree, or do you think it's something else going on?
Oh, I think it's something else. And I had the stats to back it up. It's the rushing game for the Steelers. They have nothing. They rushed for 47 yards during this game. Their top running back rushed for 18, James Conner. And they only had 17 freaking carries in the whole game. This is what ends up happening, Jared, when you rely too much on Big Ben and these receivers. We all can agree that the Steelers are a wide receiver factory, correct? Like Mike Tomlin and whoever is on that offensive staff is able to create wide receivers out of nowhere. Chase Claypool, not a top draft pick, ends up being a pretty good player this year. Juju Smith, I think he's like 4th or 5th round, right? We go back to Antonio Brown, 6th round. Deontay Johnson, I have no idea where he came from. I didn't know who he was before this season, to be honest. And I follow the NFL. But the problem is Big Ben's not the same. They're dealing with drops. So go to your rushing game. But coming into this game, everybody was like, well, the Steelers have no rushing game. And if they can't run the ball, they're going to lose. And look what happened, Jared. They didn't do anything in the first half. And they lose by a lot. Like they just, I think they scored a touchdown like the last drive of the game to make the score a little bit closer. But like when I was checking, it was always like a 2-possession game. And so the Steelers, if they can't run the ball, they have no chance at winning a Super Bowl. They have the defense, they have the quarterback, and if the receivers can just catch the ball, they have that. But you have to have everything. And when you play good teams like the Bills, they're absolutely well-rounded. You end up losing these games and looking really stupid. Yes, Jared, I do think there's a lack of focus as well. I think that's part of it. But I'm at least going to attribute more the rush game and the fact they're not doing anything. Literally nothing. 15 yards per game from these running backs. Pathetic. And they played. Who did they play last week in their game? I think it was a Tuesday.
The Monday.
Okay, so Washington is good. I was thinking of the Ravens against the Cowboys. My bad. But nonetheless, they just don't. They don't have anything. And when they're playing good defenses, they just are being shown. Washington has a good defense. You know what I'm saying? They're just getting
right. Yeah. You make a good argument about Big Ben and their running game, and I will actually agree with you and say that Big Ben, I don't think he's 100%. Back like a month ago or even a little bit longer when Pittsburgh went into Dallas to play the Cowboys, Big Ben got roughed up and he ended up hurting his knee. And I don't know if it ended up being a sprain or a bruise or whatever you want to call it, but he left at halftime and literally hobbled his way in. And most people, especially myself who was watching the game at the time, didn't think that Big Ben was going to come back out. He ended up coming back out. And from that point on, that Steelers offense basically ran in the shotgun exclusively. And so they've kind of adopted that mantra ever since that point. And you're right. I mean, James Conner did have to miss a couple weeks because he went under the COVID protocol. And obviously because he's had cancer before, he was more of a high risk. And so they really wanted to make sure that he was healthy before bringing him back. But the fact that they did have James Conner for this game against Buffalo, and they still did not utilize him, you're right, Nick. It's like, what are they doing, right? But I will tell you, I don't think Big Ben is healthy, and they want to keep him in shotgun to keep him a little bit safer. They basically want to just shotgun snap Big Ben the ball and get it out of his hands in less than 2 seconds. If Big Ben is under center, then that is just more of an opportunity for the defense to get to Big Ben, whether he is just a straight drop back from center or if he's doing a play action. So they're like, screw it. We're going to put him in shotgun, let him be able to see the entire defense and go from there. So, I mean, I guess in one perspective, it's good because it's hopefully less chance that Big Ben gets injured. Yeah. But you're right. They're literally taking their own running game away. The defense doesn't even have to do anything. Yeah. So you're kind of screwing yourself.
No, and here's the thing, too. Like, again, that game for a while was like 0-0. And that's when you try to get the running game going. They only rushed the ball 17 times the whole game. I don't understand. Like, going into halftime, they were leading. And then, they threw the interception. They had the pick six.
I was just going to say, that was the first point of that game. That was right before halftime. The Bills went pick six.
Exactly. And that was really bad. And that's something that you can't have happen. But again, like, why up to that point weren't you trying to run the ball when it's 0-0 and your defense is playing well? Like, I don't understand that. I really don't. And so it's just, I have some stats here, Jared, just to back up because I knew this was true. So I'm going to give you a couple teams, and you tell me if these teams are good, okay? Chicago Bears.
No.
Cincinnati Bengals.
Is that a real question?
No, it's not. Detroit Lions.
No, what is this?
And the Houston Texans.
Are you kidding? The Houston Texans are probably the worst of all. Did you see them just get routed by the Bears?
So no, Jared. Those are the teams that are with the Steelers at the bottom of the league in rushing. The Steelers are 31st in the NFL in rushing, averaging 89 yards per game. The Bears, Bengals, and Lions all rush more than the 11-2 Steelers. Wow. And the Texans are only a few yards behind them.
See, I'm curious, and this will be, this will have to be some research that we do, and we'll have to come back next week. But when they were on their 11-game winning streak and before Big Ben originally got injured against the Cowboys in that game, I want to know what their rushing attempts were like before then, right? Because it had to have been better. There's no way that Pittsburgh went on an 11-game winning streak without having a running game. I mean,
Okay,
James Conner is a legitimate running back.
Yeah, Jared, I do have some stats for you. You said he got hurt in the Cowboys game.
I believe that I know he got injured in that game. He might have gotten injured before that game, but I know in that game specifically, he hobbled to the locker room at halftime, and from then on, he hasn't looked the same.
Okay, we're gonna get some live stats here. So looking on ESPN's website, and I'm just looking at the high in rushing for the Steelers in these games. So New York, to this begin the season, week 1, 113 yards from the highest rusher, solid. Denver, week 2, 106 yards. Houston, week 3, 109.
And these are all like individual rushers or as a team?
That's just one guy on the team.
Oh, okay.
So all right. That's good. What I'm saying is that's good enough, right? Like if you're getting a guy rushing for 100 yards, that's fine. They get the bye week, week 5. That's an odd one. They have 136 yards in the game, but most of it's off one play from Ray McLeod on like an end around. So that's where maybe you look, and that's against Philadelphia. So where you look like, okay, there's some issues. Against Cleveland, they win by 31, 101 yards. Tennessee, 82 yards. And then they play the Ravens, and that's where Connor had only 47 yards in the game. And since then, it's been trash. 22, 36, Jacksonville 89 doesn't really count. Snell 60, McFarland Jr. 15 against Washington. McFarland Jr. 15, and then Connor 18. So you're correct, Jared. That Cowboys game, or at least around that Cowboys and Ravens game, is where the rushing has just disappeared. So yeah, their rushing game was fine when they were playing trash opponents, and now that they play good opponents, where do they go? Right. Like, and that's exactly what I was saying too. I was saying when they play good teams, they have no running. And what, Jared, do you play bad teams in the playoffs? No, you play good teams.
No, I mean, listen, because of the NFC East this year, you might.
But the Steelers don't.
But it wouldn't be the Steelers playing them, so no.
Hey, Jared, they already lost to Washington, so we already know they would lose to the NFC. So, yeah, I mean, it's incredible. We need to move on to this last game, but that we're talking about for Week 14. But it's just not good for the Steelers, and it's looking like they are looking less and less like true Super Bowl contenders, even though they were 11-0 2 weeks ago. That's NFL for you. All right, moving on to the best team in the AFC. That's clearly ahead of the Steelers.
Best team in the NFL.
And the Bills is the Chiefs and Dolphins. AFC Championship game, and then you never know, right? So, Chiefs, Dolphins, my takeaways from this game, and I'll let you discuss this game a little bit too, were it seemed there's two things. One, Dolphins, no running game. Everybody out from COVID. They're missing Devontae Parker for most of the game, top wide receiver. And then Mike Gesicki, breakout tight end this year, gets hurt later on in the game, and they still lose by like one possession to the Chiefs. Dolphins team is legit. And that's why I mentioned earlier that the Ravens, with the same record, the Ravens just might not make the playoffs because of the Dolphins. And it's not their fault. You know what I'm saying? So it's the Dolphins are legit. I'm glad Tua's in there making plays. And if they can compete with the Chiefs, they can compete with anybody. We'll see what they end up doing for the rest of the season. But I really like this Dolphins team. And once they just start getting guys healthy, you know, I'm not saying the Super Bowl contenders, but I'm saying they're going to make the playoffs and they might beat somebody. You know what I'm saying? Because if they can do this with the Chiefs, there you go. Now, I did mention Trap game a little with the Chiefs, right? They keep winning. They've only lost once this year, right? And the one loss is to the Raiders. They, redid that and they beat them. So essentially, like I said, they're pseudo undefeated coming into into these games, right? The Chiefs, the one problem I see with Patrick Mahomes right now is he's getting a little lazy. We all saw the 30-yard sack he took. There's a bunch of other plays where he's trying to create things and he's just making really bad plays. And I really hope that once they get to the playoffs, he hunkers it down and gets more to smart football. He's getting away with it because you have Tyreek Hill, you have Travis Kelce, you have the two running back head monster with Le'Veon Bell and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But the one thing I want to say about the Chiefs, and the reason why the Dolphins came back in this game, because the Chiefs are clearly the better team, is because Mahomes, at least from what I saw, I didn't watch this entire game. Every time I turned it on, he was making mistakes, big mistakes, getting sacked, trying to throw balls that aren't open and stuff like that. And I just think that's the one thing you look with really, really good teams. Is there something you can point at? And I think, at least with me, it's Mahomes. Maybe it's the Super Bowl last year. Maybe it's the commercials. I think he's getting a little ahead of himself here, and he needs to calm it down heading into the playoffs. What are your thoughts on that? And then what are your thoughts on the Dolphins?
See, I don't know if I can go there with you. I will say this. Mahomes, we found out on Sunday that Mahomes is actually human. For a minute, I wasn't really sure.
Yeah.
I was like, this guy could be from another planet. He's got the arm. He's got the $500 million contract. I was a little skeptical there that he was even human, but he ended up throwing 3 interceptions, which, to my knowledge, is the most in one game that he's ever thrown in his career. So we have to give the Miami Dolphins secondary credit for those interceptions. I believe the first one was on a tipped pass, but the other one, Xavier Howard, one of the best cornerbacks in the league, who leads the NFL in interceptions, had a one-handed one. It was like one of the plays of the year. So, Dolphins secondary is making plays out there. But, for Mahomes, he is human. He can throw interceptions. I will say this. The Chiefs, I like the Chiefs, and I love to watch them play because I think they're so exciting. But, the Chiefs, man, they are so annoying. And you want to know why they're annoying?
Oh, yeah.
It's because they can have a bad start like they did. But Mahomes can throw 2 interceptions in the first quarter. They can be down 7-0. Miami can have all of the momentum. And then literally, it's like they snap their fingers and then they score 14 in the second quarter. And it's like, oh, there's the Chiefs. They decided to wake up. It's like, oh, they had an early 1 o'clock game. They had to travel. Maybe they're just a little tired. Didn't have the best breakfast in the morning. Took them a little extra long to kind of get up for this game. And then when they decided to actually play, they do. It's like, listen, I'm not a huge chess player, but if I'm not mistaken, it's the queen piece that you can move, that can move anywhere. Like, there is nothing that the queen piece can't do, right? That, to me, is what Tyreek Hill is. Because Tyreek Hill in the first quarter wasn't necessarily getting passes thrown or at least completed by Patrick Mahomes. And so what does head coach Andy Reid do? He says, you know what? Screw it. We're not going to try to throw Tyreek Hill the ball. We're just going to literally hand it off to him on a jet sweep. And he takes it like 30 yards for a touchdown. It's like literally, I'm telling you, they sleepwalk when they want to. And then it's like, all right, guys, let's go down this drive and let's actually score. And it's just like, it's easy. It's easy. And from then on, they score 14 in the second quarter. They come out in the third quarter and they score 16. They take a commanding lead. Let's give credit to Miami for coming back. You're right. Devontae Parker leaves the game. Mike Gesicki leaves the game. And Gesicki had already had 2 touchdowns in that game. Yeah. He's got a great rapport with Tua already, but he gets hurt. And Miami still comes back and competes. So let's give them credit there. But the Chiefs, man, they're a cheat code. They kind of play when they want to play. And I have all the confidence in the world that when their heads are screwed on straight and they're serious, they can't lose, man.
Well, but see, that's the thing, Jared. That's what I'm saying, though. The problem is that, and I think they'll hunker down and be fine. But Mahomes, and specifically the whole team, sometimes doesn't take these games seriously. And I just hope.
Is what I'm saying.
Well, but Jared, you do have to, because they can't. To me, I'll give you two reasons why. They lost to the Patriots 2 years ago in the playoffs. They should have won that game. Now, we all say coin toss, Mahomes wins, but they still lost, right? And then you look at that Super Bowl game last year. Jimmy Garoppolo completes that pass to Emmanuel Sanders. They lose the Super Bowl. So I'm just saying, they are beatable. Like you're saying, Mahomes is human. And at least what I'm noticing is in a big game against the Dolphins, he comes up, he runs backwards with no chance of getting the ball off and gets sacked 30 yards away. There was often times where he would go to throw a ball and then just get tackled by defenders. And then also, the 3 interceptions is something that you can just put out there as a stat, and then everybody understands that. But I
don't know if we'll ever see that again.
No, well,
I think that.
Yeah, no, I mean you don't. But I'm saying if he plays the way he did play, and the lackadaisical way he played this last Sunday, at least from what I noticed, that could happen. And this is where I'll point to perfect transition. They play the New Orleans Saints this week. The rest of their schedule is Atlanta and the Los Angeles Chargers. So they are going to end up with at least 15 or 14 wins, right? This Saints game leading into the playoffs, I think, is a telltale sign of what the Chiefs are going into this playoffs. Are they the true best top team in the NFL, or do they have their issues? And I think I'm really hoping Drew Brees comes back for this game. Obviously, when we're releasing this podcast right now on a Monday, we don't know if Brees is playing yet. So if he is end up playing, disregard this and just know he's playing. But if Brees is playing, I want to see the Saints put the pressure on the Chiefs, and I want to see if the Chiefs can win this game. You know what I'm saying? Because who else? I'm trying to see who else they played this season as far as like top teams. Really, Jared, besides the Bills, which was a weird Tuesday game, and the Buccaneers, it's been nobody. And the Buccaneers, we now know are a fairly average playoff team. We don't know if they're a Super Bowl contender or not. The Chiefs' schedule has been relatively easy this season now when you look back on it. And this is a real opponent besides the Bills. And again, the Bills game was on like a Monday or Tuesday, I remember, and things were thrown off because of COVID. So I don't really know what to look at that game, and I don't want to give the Chiefs 100% credit for beating the Bills. I think the Bills are a better team than they were during that game. But so this is a late season top matchup that you don't see a lot in the NFL. I'm excited to see this game. What are your thoughts on this game really quickly, moving to week 15? And do you think, similar to me, that the Chiefs need to prove something here, or do you think they've already proven themselves?
To me personally, the Chiefs don't need to prove anything. They've proven that they're a great team by being 12-1. They've proven, obviously, by winning the Super Bowl last year and coming back and so far not really having a hangover, that they are legitimate. Now, I don't think there's going to be any, lack of concentration or study this week, because they are going up against a legitimate team in the New Orleans Saints. And I think we can say the same thing about the Saints, regardless of whether Drew Brees plays or not, because the Saints are coming off of a bad loss to the Eagles. Now, you can say that, obviously, Jalen Hurts played for the Eagles, and there wasn't a whole lot of film for the Saints to watch. And so there were things probably that Jalen Hurts did that the Saints were not prepared for. But I can guarantee you the Saints are going to be prepared and ready for this Chiefs team. This game is in New Orleans as well. I wish there were fans for this game. Like, there's certain matchups where you want fans in the stands. This will be one where, I would really want to see how Kansas City can respond to a, raucous crowd like what New Orleans can typically bring. But we don't get that. I think this is by far and away the best and most intriguing matchup of Week 15. I hope Drew Brees plays, because I think we can get more of a shootout. Obviously Taysom Hill brings a different type of style of offense, but either way, whoever wins this game, it's like, okay, this is probably the best team. I'm going to say that the Chiefs are the best team in the AFC. If the Saints can somehow win this game, I think the Saints regain the being the best team in the NFC over the Packers, who currently, as of Monday, December 15th, I'm going to give the Packers the top nod in the NFC. But I can't wait for this game. Patrick Mahomes will not throw 3 interceptions. I can almost guarantee you that. The Saints do have a good secondary, but Mahomes will be a little bit more locked in. As of right now, I'm going to give this game to the Chiefs, right? Listen, the Chiefs only have 1 loss on the season. And yes, maybe they're not playing their absolute best football, but on paper, they are the more talented football team. And until I see this Chiefs team really stumble, I can't pick against them.
Yeah, and like we just mentioned, we want Brees to play in this game, because I think a Taysom Hill-led Saints is just not as good, right? And you're not going to give that game to the Saints. I will say this, though, and I want to go back really quickly to the loss that the only loss to the season that the Bills had, and that is the Raiders. In this game,
the Chiefs. The only loss the Chiefs had.
The Chiefs lost to the Raiders. Yeah, excuse me. But you had 2 running backs in that game for the Raiders rushed for over 70 yards in this game. And overall, the team ran for 144 yards against the Chiefs. And I think that might be the formula for the Saints, like to use Alvin Kamara with those short passes to guys like Michael Thomas and stuff like that. Use Taysom Hill if he's the quarterback. If he's not the quarterback, use Taysom Hill to run. You know what I'm saying? So it's like that's the formula to at least beat the Chiefs in these big games. And that's what I'm going to look back on with the Raiders. They also rushed the ball pretty well in that rematch that they faced the Chiefs as well. So I think, like I mentioned, not a lot of top-tier opponents for the Chiefs, so we don't have a lot to look at. But at least if I'm going to give the Saints a chance, no matter who the quarterback is, they have to have a running game. And I'm going to go back to this.
Yeah, listen, a running game makes your team better, number one. It makes them a more balanced offense. It keeps Patrick Mahomes on the sidelines, which is the most important thing.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
If you throw the ball 3 straight plays and you don't convert, you're stopping the clock every single play. You probably only take like 20 or 30 seconds off. When you run the ball, the clock is continuing to run. And if you have a good rushing offense like the Saints do, then you're going to stick with it throughout the game unless it's a blowout. Right. And I think sometimes that's what certain teams go away from is like they get down by 10 points and they kind of get scared and flustered. And it's like, oh, my gosh, we have to go away from the run and we have to start throwing the ball. The Saints are one of those teams that will continue to stick with their running game and believe in Alvin Kamara. And I'm sorry, I'm blanking on their backup running back right now. But they lean on their running game and they don't go away from it unless they absolutely have to. Last thing I will say is even if Drew Brees does play in this game, I'm hoping he would be at 100%, but I'm very skeptical of that. And I think Taysom Hill is still going to get his plays. Like, I think Taysom Hill will get like 10 to 15, maybe even 20 snaps in this game, whether he's throwing it or they bring him in for a specific run package. I don't think Drew Brees is just going to come in and drop back and throw 50 or 60 passes. I don't see that, especially first game coming back from 11 broken ribs. There's no way that they would just throw Brees back into the wolves like that.
No, and that's what they shouldn't do. And again, Latavius Murray is the other running back for the Saints. That's a two-headed monster with him and Kamara. Use that and then take advantage of the play action. Like you're saying, you don't want a shootout with the Chiefs because you will lose. Ask Miami and ask a lot of the other teams this season. What the Raiders did in their 2 big wins against the Browns and against the Chiefs was they ran the hell out of the ball. And they took time off the clock and they were able to win that way. So I look at the Saints, even with Drew Brees and you don't have your running quarterback, use Taysom Hill, use Kamara, and use Murray. And then that opens up lanes for guys like Michael Thomas and Drew Brees to have more open guys. It's a simple strategy. And that's what I'm going to give the Saints a chance to win. And if you're the Chiefs, do your thing and don't be lazy like you were this week. That's all I'm going to say. So real quickly, the second best game that we've agreed upon in Week 15, not the best, but is Cardinals Eagles. And essentially it's because the Cardinals right now are firm in the 7th seed and they control their own destiny. Now, my Cardinals have a very difficult schedule to end the season. It actually got more difficult with Jalen Hurts being the quarterback for the Eagles. We didn't expect that. As Cardinals fans, we were like, okay, the Giants, it killed them or whatever, record-breaking sacks, all that stuff. Oh, Eagles, Carson, well, I can't wait to play them. Nope. And then we play the 49ers and the Rams to end the season. So you look at the Cardinals need to win this game, and the Eagles also need to win this game with losses from the Giants and the Cowboys being behind them in the standings. You look at them and you see Washington winning and stuff. They need to win this game. So we've agreed upon that this is the second best game in Week 15. Jared, we know about the Cardinals. They look improved. Kyler Murray looks a little bit better. This is more about Jalen Hurts. What I saw was something very interesting about this game, and that is that they ran the ball a lot. Jalen Hurts had over 100 yards, and it seemed that Jalen Hurts and Doug Peterson were on the same page. And this goes to a bigger story about the Eagles besides even this game. That at least what I've noticed now after the last, 3 years, that when Carson Wentz isn't the quarterback for the Eagles, things run just a lot more smoothly. And I think that's due to the fact that Doug Peterson wants control of his quarterbacks. And Carson Wentz seems to go off the script and try to make crazy plays. And it's not really his fault. He has that mentality as a quarterback. And I can't blame him for that. But I think one of the reasons, actually not one of the reasons, but the reason that we have this, disintegration of a relationship between Carson Wentz and Doug Peterson, even though this roster and team isn't that bad, is because Carson Wentz is uncontrollable. And Jalen Hurts listens to the plays and does what they tell him to do. And Nick Foles listened to the plays and did what they told him to do. It's similar. Wasn't Doug Peterson the offensive coordinator for Alex Smith as well? Another guy that kind of just does what you tell him, right? So I think that's now we figured out the problem, that Hurts had a successful game. He rushed the ball efficiently. Every play looked smooth. There wasn't a lot of mistakes. I think they figured out what truly is wrong, and it's that Carson Wentz is uncontrollable. What are your thoughts on this, Jared?
Well, you're not totally wrong. It might be jumping the gun a little bit, because this is Jalen Hurts' first game starting. No, I'm talking about Jalen Hurts here. It's his first game starting, right? So I think we can point to a multitude of things. There isn't a whole lot of NFL film out there for defenses to really look at and really know what this Eagles offense will look like with Jalen Hurts behind center, right? Were they even going to really attempt a lot of passes? Because Jalen Hurts, coming out of college, yes, he can throw the ball, but he is known for being athletic, using his legs to extend and to make plays. So was the Eagles offense going to look completely different? Were they going to bring in new plays, or were they going to try to run the same system and basically say, okay, Jalen Hurts, we want you to be a throwing quarterback now? And we saw a little bit of both. And you're right on the confidence factor. Here's the thing with Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts, because he doesn't know any better, he would look to his first read and potentially his second read. And if those weren't there, he was off and running, right? Carson Wentz wants to sit in the pocket, and he will go first read, second read, third read, fourth read. And if he's even lucky enough to get to the fourth read, he's getting sacked, right? He doesn't seem to have that accelerated clock in his head to know, okay, time is up. I need to get out of the pocket and run. And if he does, he's still like hesitant. He's not running because he's trying to run to get yards. He is waiting at that line of scrimmage to wait and see if one of his receivers will up and up. And it's just giving the defensive line and defenders more of an opportunity to come and sack Carson Wentz. Jalen Hurts, what we saw on Sunday was he's running to gain yards and to try to get a first down. He's also, I would say, a little more athletic from a running standpoint than Jalen Hurts is in the first place. But still, we saw a confident runner in Jalen Hurts, and he was able to pick up yards and pick up first down. So now as a defense, you have to put that into your game plan. You can't just all out blitz. You have to be, you have to stay in your lanes and play gap assignment football, because if you miss a gap, Jalen Hurts can beat you with his legs as well. So it's another proponent that we're seeing from this Philadelphia offense, and the Cardinals are going to have their hands full with them this week. So I think it really just comes down to the confidence factor. When a play breaks down, Jalen Hurts is more prepared and more willing to just say, you know what, play's over, I'm running. Carson Wentz wants to hold it and hold it and hold it. And once or twice a game, he'll make a great throw, but more likely than not, he is making an errant throw that typically leads to an interception. Carson Wentz, over the last 2 years, leads the entire NFL, not even just quarterbacks, but mainly quarterbacks, in turnovers, whether it's an interception or fumble. So there's obviously multiple reasons why Wentz is now sitting on the bench.
Well, Jared, I mean, I'll be honest, I hope I'm wrong about Jalen Hurts and the whole Eagles scheme, because I want us to destroy the Eagles this week. All joking aside, quick prediction on this game, because we do need to move on to college football. I do expect one thing. I think the Cardinals have gained a bit of confidence coming into this game, and they understand that they control their own destiny. The next two games, 49ers are looking a little weary, so that game is a little easier now looking on paper than it would have been, like, say, 3 weeks ago when they beat the Rams, or 2 weeks ago. And the Eagles, you got to think that now the Cardinals have full tape on Jalen Hurts. They don't have to watch Jalen Hurts at Oklahoma against Big 12 defenses, or they don't have to watch Jalen Hurts like 3 years ago at Alabama. They now can watch him against the New Orleans Saints defense. And, again, that game started to fall apart a little bit for the Saints, and the Eagles almost lost that game as well, even after the good start. So it's not like Jalen Hurts came in there and won by 30. it was a close game. So I think you look at this game, can Jalen Hurts not have the quote-unquote sophomore slump game in his second game? And can the Cardinals take advantage of their momentum and also look at the tape and learn how to essentially stop Jalen Hurts' rushing attack? Because I think that's the biggest problem here. I think you look at those receivers for the Eagles and you go, okay, well, we can cover those guys similarly like we did with the Giants receivers. And as long as we just stop Jalen Hurts and Miles Sanders, this will be a pretty easy win for us. So not as easy as we're saying, but it's easier now that you've seen tape. And I am glad, as a Cardinals fan at least, that we know what to expect from Jalen Hurts, and we weren't the Saints last week. That's at least what I'm saying. But we'll move on to college football here. Few things to talk about. We'll have to go through this relatively quickly just because we went long on the NFL like we usually do, because we can't stop talking about the NFL. But it's conference championship week, like we mentioned. It's a different conference championship week because we got everybody else playing also in this conference championship week. Normally we'd have like a few games to watch. You'd have the SEC championship, ACC, Pac-12, all that stuff this week. We also have like everybody trying to catch up on games and help their schedules and stuff like that. So it's a very, very interesting championship week. But nonetheless, you still have your game that will determine who's in the college football playoff. But we want to start with the biggest moment from last week, and that is Florida getting upset by LSU, and specifically because of one guy. And that is, I don't know who the player is, but it's the dude that threw the shoe from an LSU player after a third down. Now, let me just explain this to you guys. So at this point in the game is tied between LSU and Florida, right? Trap game for Florida, clearly. They're playing Alabama this week, and they go, oh, LSU, they got beaten by Alabama by like 40 last week. They're terrible this year. Nobody respects Coach O anymore. Let's just go in, easy win, right? No, tough game, right? They go in, and it's 34-34 at this point. LSU has the ball. First down, incomplete pass. Second down, rush up the middle or something like that. No gate. It's 3rd and 10. Short pass, 4 yards, 3rd and 6. Jared, you're going, oh, Florida's chance. Here they go. They're going to kick a field goal. They're going to win. Nope. One of the DBs for Florida takes the LSU guy's shoe and throws it 20 yards down the field. That creates a first down. It creates, I believe, a 10 or 15-yard penalty. They move down the field, and LSU kicks a field goal. Florida then has to attempt a long field goal at the end of the game on their next drive in misty in the rain, and they miss it. And so you literally go back and you blame that guy for losing, and now Florida has no chance at the national championship. They have no chance in the semifinal. So, Jared, what are we to think? This is one of the stupidest things I've ever seen in sports. Like, this isn't – we're talking on Monday about one of the craziest Monday Night Football games and one of the dumbest college football plays and one of the dumbest sports plays I've ever seen, because it killed Florida's chance at any possibility, even if they beat Alabama getting into this championship game.
Yeah, we never like to say, especially in football, that like one play or one thing changed the outcome of a game, right? There's 60 minutes. Yeah. There's so many plays, so many different things happen. No. This one play, like changed the game, is the reason why Florida lost. Now, let's give LSU credit for hanging in this game, right? And putting up points, even though LSU has been god-awful all season long. And obviously, like, Florida should have literally annihilated LSU, but I think we give LSU credit for actually showing up to this game. And we say, Florida, you guys let this one slip away. This was indeed, like you said, a trap game. I would have loved, actually, no, I wouldn't have. To be in that locker room, that Florida locker room after that game, and to be that player. I mean, if you're a head coach, like what do you do? Like, do you just scold that guy? Do you do it privately behind closed doors, one-on-one? Do you do it in front of the whole team? Do you not scold him? Like, how do you, I mean, obviously he knows that this kid knows that he screwed up, but yeah, this Florida team was currently at number 6. Like they had a chance, and technically still do because they're in the SEC championship game, but they had a great chance to potentially get into the college football playoff. And because of a stupid, bonehead, idiotic. I could say a whole lot of other things, but I'm not going to because it's a family show. It cost his team a legitimate opportunity. Now, I will say the only way that Florida will ever get into the college football playoff this year is if they absolutely blow out Alabama, which we all know will not happen because Alabama is the juggernaut. They are the best team. And the only thing Alabama does is blow out their opponents. They do not get blown out, right? So even if Florida were to win, it would have to be by such a convincing manner that the College Football Playoff Committee would have no choice but to put Florida in. And those odds, let me tell you, are slim to none. So Florida, bye. Like your college football chances just went out the window, and you guys will be playing in like the Sun Bowl or something now. So congratulations. You went from potentially being top dog to a bowl game that no one really cares about. And that's where we are with that.
Wow, Jared, you relegated him to the Sun Bowl. You know how bad the Sun Bowl is? The Sun Bowl isn't even happening this year.
Well, there you go. Then Florida's not even playing in a bowl game. Yeah. I don't know.
No, I again, we can lament on this whole issue, but yeah, because when you looked, oh God, it's so stupid when you think about it, because it's just when you look at this, Florida's still behind Texas A&M, even if they win this game, right? Because Texas A&M beat Florida by 3 points this year. Texas A&M's only loss is to Alabama, a real bad one by 28 points. But you looked at that Alabama game and you go, okay, well, if Florida can beat Alabama, Jared, I think we both can agree there is the respectable conversation to say, okay, well, Florida, you lost Texas A&M by 3, but you beat Alabama and you also beat Georgia on the season. You're in over Texas A&M, even though technically same record as Texas A&M, and but they would have more wins, more better wins, right? So even with the lost Texas A&M, Florida has the case to make it into the college football playoff with the win over Alabama, even though they had lost to Texas A&M, who's ahead of them in the standings. Now, I can't, Jared, give them, no matter what, a college football playoff chance, even if they beat Alabama, because Texas A&M's only lost once. They only lost once. So
they got to win by 50. They got to win by 50.
Yeah, exactly. They have to blow out Alabama, which, again, is not going to happen. And if it does happen, I don't know what I'm going to have to do on this podcast.
You know how it happens? If, like, all of Alabama, like, their starters get COVID and they're forced to play the game.
It is the
and they're
one
playing
year.
with their, and they're playing with their third stringers. But guess what? Alabama's third stringers are still, like, 5-star recruit athletes that can come in and start at any college right now. So it's like Alabama would still probably win the game. I mean, it's just it's over.
Yeah, it's the number one quarterback recruit, Bryce Young from Modern Day. That's the guy that would come in, and I'm sure he'd win the game. I'm sure, right? I'm sure he'd keep it close, right? Yeah, you're right. I mean, like literally, Alabama's like second string guys are like USC essentially. That's what that team is. So let's move on, though. We'll get to Texas A&M in a second because they are the number 5 team. They are playing this week, so they're grabbing that extra game. They're playing Tennessee, and they have one loss. Like I said, they're one loss to Alabama, a bad one by 28. Let's get to the 2 biggest conference games of the year that truly matter for the college football playoff. Because we already talked about, Alabama and Florida. It's Ohio State and Northwestern, which had a chance to be a better matchup if Northwestern hadn't blown it against Michigan State, and then Clemson, Notre Dame. So, Jared, I'll ask you this first just to get this one out of the way. If Ohio State loses this game against Northwestern, there are no Big Ten representatives, correct?
No doubt. Yeah. It's over for the Big Ten.
Now, if Ohio State does win, do you leap? Okay, well, actually, no, I won't say this. So let's just say Ohio State wins this game, right?
They should.
We're just gonna retroactively put Ohio State as a win. Texas A&M is gonna beat Tennessee this week, so you have 4 and 5. Now you have the Notre Dame Clemson matchup, which is 2 versus 3. You have a rematch, but it's not really a rematch because Notre Dame's facing Trevor Lawrence for the first time. This is where stuff gets nuts. And I think we can agree if Clemson loses again, they're probably not in. correct?
They're out.
2 losses to Texas A&M, 1, right? Barring Texas A&M not losing, they're in. But what if Notre Dame loses? What if the undefeated Notre Dame Fighting Irish, who by the way, get a more credible win against North Carolina 2 weeks ago, but North Carolina destroyed Miami this week. Even though they're a Live 3 loss team, North Carolina is a good win for Notre Dame on the schedule. Is Notre Dame out, or are they number 4, and do they slip in ahead of Texas A&M? Like,
depends on how they lose. Depends on how they lose.
Fair.
Depends on how they lose.
But Jared,
right? because
let me say this real quick to interrupt you. Remember, Texas A&M lost by 28 to Alabama.
Right.
So that's where this goes.
Well, listen, I'm looking, and we go back to the first matchup where Clemson went to Notre Dame, and obviously this ACC championship will be a neutral site. It'll be in North Carolina, I believe. But when the first matchup, you mentioned Trevor Lawrence didn't play, and Clemson still put up 40 points, right? It was still 47-40. So obviously Clemson can still hang in, and I think we can both agree that if Trevor Lawrence was playing in that game, Clemson probably wins that game. So we look ahead to this matchup with a healthy Trevor Lawrence and a relatively healthy rest of the Clemson roster. And now I'm not going to say they're going to blow Notre Dame out, but I think they could win. They win by 2 touchdowns. Like I don't think that's out of the question. I think that could happen relatively easily. So to me, it's about how bad does Notre Dame, potentially lose this game. And I think that's where it is, because if it's a 3-point game or even a 7-point game and it's like back and forth the whole way, I think the committee is going to have no choice but to leave Notre Dame in, because they are currently are currently undefeated, and this would potentially be their only loss. So I think you would have to leave them in if it's a close win. If it's a double-digit 2-3 touchdown loss and they just don't look like they have it, then I think Texas A&M, they're like, hey guys, we're right here. Yeah, we had a really bad loss, but it was to Alabama, the one and only juggernaut team, in all of college football, and Texas A&M is going to be banging on that door. So really, there is no like clear-cut answer right now. It's how does Notre Dame play, and then that potentially opens the door for Texas A&M. But that is this Clemson Notre Dame game is the one major game that I will have my eye on. Like, yeah, I'm gonna watch Alabama, Florida. Yeah, I'm gonna watch Ohio State, Northwestern. Obviously Oregon and USC. I'm gonna watch all the games. But Clemson, Ohio State is going to project and is going to show where the seedings are for the college football playoff. That is the one game, the major game of the week, in my opinion.
Oh, no. I mean, it's the biggest game of the season because you already have seen this happen. A great storyline from the last game where you have the backup quarterback, a number 1 recruit coming in, and you had Notre Dame. The one thing I'll say this too, here's the way you stop Notre Dame from blowing you out, Notre Dame. If you're Notre Dame, here's the way you stop Clemson from blowing you out. And that's stop Travis Etienne like they did last time. Last time they put it all on the rookie quarterback's shoulders, and he was able to obviously get them into OT, and it gives them credibility in that fact too. But if they can stop Travis Etienne, at least you stop 1/2 of that ridiculous firepower that Clemson has with Trevor Lawrence and Etienne. And you do the same strategy. You run the football like we're talking about in a lot of these big football games this week. You take time off the clock, and you make the score look good. I think if you're Notre Dame, you just go, okay, well, obviously we don't want to put the committee's hands on this, and we don't want them to pick Texas A&M over us because of a late loss, because we've seen that in the past. A late loss or a late win for a team ends up helping. I just think if you're looking at the committee, right, and you see Notre Dame lose, and you go, okay, well, Notre Dame beat Clemson. They've also beat North Carolina, who destroyed Miami. Right? You look at Clemson. Clemson, if they lose, like I mentioned, they would have lost to Notre Dame twice. And so that's, really just real bad for them. And they also only beat Miami. Other than that, and Miami got killed by North Carolina. So you look at it and you go, okay, Clemson's gone, right? And you look at Texas A&M, only one loss to Alabama. That's better than Clemson's loss, all that stuff. I just think Notre Dame loses by by 2 touchdowns or less in this game. And you have to look at it like, who has a better chance against Alabama, Notre Dame or Texas A&M? There's nothing that would tell you that Texas A&M is going to beat them when they lost by 28. Notre Dame clearly has a better chance with the way they're competing against Clemson, who's the second best team. So that's at least how I see it. And I really don't think Notre Dame ends up. Yeah. So now let's create this discussion. I think it's probably going to be easy because we're having such a thorough discussion on these teams. USC, Coastal Carolina, and Cincinnati. They're all undefeated, and Cincinnati could have done some things. I don't know what the AAC's rules were on rescheduling games. I assume Cincinnati wasn't allowed to, and that's why they haven't played in like 3 weeks. Coastal Carolina scheduled BYU and won. They tried to make their schedule better. And USC, their one glitch in their matrix is they actually didn't play their best team on their schedule, Colorado, because of cancellations. I blame more the Pac-12 for all that stuff because the Pac-12, before that Colorado game, hadn't said that you could reschedule opponents because the Pac-12 just sucks, and it's just so you look at these undefeated teams. USC plays Oregon, Pac-12 championship game on Friday, not Washington, but I think Oregon's the better team regardless. Coastal Carolina plays a ranked Louisiana team that I believe beat Iowa State, who's playing in the Big 12 championship game earlier this season, amongst other wins. And Cincinnati plays a ranked Tulsa team that I believe only has one loss this season as well. So, Jared, do any of those teams have a chance to slip in? Let's say if Notre Dame gets killed, let's say if Texas A&M has a real close win against a bad Tennessee team, or one of these teams, obviously if Texas A&M loses, do any of these teams have a true chance to make the college football playoff? Or essentially is it Notre Dame loses by 2 touchdowns or less, Texas A&M wins anyway, and they're in? Like, what can happen to make any of these teams get in?
Nothing.
Wow.
Nothing.
Wow.
Nothing. Listen, those teams are cute, and Coastal Carolina is a Cinderella story. And if we were talking college basketball, yeah, I would have a little more faith in Coastal Carolina because we all know what happens in the college basketball playoff, which we March Madness is. Listen, any team can win. We've seen that every single year. There's always Cinderella teams that come out and win. Not necessarily in college football. And basically the reason why I say none of those teams, as in I wouldn't believe in a USC, I wouldn't believe in the Coastal Carolina, and I wouldn't believe in a Cincinnati, are any of those teams going to legitimately have a shot to beat Alabama, which would be the first team that they would play because one would play 4, 2 would play 3. And the answer is hell no. I would rather see a 2-loss Clemson, which wouldn't happen, but I'd rather see a 2-loss Clemson. I'd rather see a 2-loss Texas A&M, or even if Texas A&M barely beats a bad Tennessee, I'd rather see Texas A&M in there. So for that reason alone, hell no. I don't want to see any of those 3 teams in because it would be a cakewalk. It would be like Alabama at the beginning of the season, trying to basically have a tune-up game to kind of get their season rolling. This is what it would be. It would be almost a bye week. And I'm sorry to say it because I'm not trying to throw any shade at Cincinnati or Coastal Carolina or USC. It's just I don't think any of those teams are on par. I would say USC would probably, be able to have the best talent to match up with an Alabama. Mm-hmm. But even still, USC's recruiting classes the last couple of years have not been subpar. I believe last year they were like ranked 56 or something like that. So they're not getting those top 5, top 10 recruiting classes like they have been before. Guys from athletes from California are leaving. They're not staying here and going to USC and UCLA. They are leaving and going out of state. So no, I don't see any of those teams matching up with Alabama and making it for a good game. So I'm not saying, Coastal Carolina, they'll more likely go undefeated. That is fantastic. But are you really going to match up with the big dogs? And I have to say no. Like, congratulations, you went undefeated, but you're gonna get slammed by Alabama. I don't see any other way around.
I'll say this, and again, I mentioned the 3 teams and who they play and stuff like that. Coastal Carolina, the problem with them is they're undefeated, and they beat BYU, and they beat Louisiana already this season is ranked, and they have a chance to beat Louisiana again. One of the reasons Louisiana is still ranked is because they played Coastal Carolina. A lot of the Coastal Carolina's other games were close games against like Georgia Southern and these nobody teams. I think that's where you look at and you go, okay, well, you needed to beat like a top 10 team this season and also blow out everybody, right? And I think that's why Coastal Carolina is ranked way down at like number 13, because the committee is like, okay, well, you guys are undefeated, but you just haven't played good enough against every team you played, and that's their problem. You then look at USC. USC, like you said, they probably have the best talent of all these teams, but they almost lost to U of A, and they barely won against UCLA last week, who has a horrible defense. So USC has not done. They needed to blow out everybody in a 5-6 game season, and they really haven't blown out anybody. So they can only blame themselves as well. Now, maybe they go 63-7, or they do an ASU U of A and they just beat the crap out of Oregon. Maybe we have a different conversation. But nonetheless, I think USC hurt themselves, and the Pac-12 itself screwed themselves over when they were just lazy and, they were sitting in their San Francisco office paying way too much rent. Then you look at Cincinnati. Cincinnati's ranked number 8. And one of the reasons, Jared, they're ranked number 8 is because here's what they've done this season. The 2 ranked teams that they've played, they beat Army. Army obviously runs the ball a lot. Clock ticks off. They beat Army by two touchdowns. Army was ranked number 22 at that point. They beat SMU, who was ranked 16 at that point and actually still has a pretty good record, by 29 points. The rest of their schedule, they won games 55-20, 28-7, 49-10, 38-10, 55-17, and in a tough matchup against UCF, they win by 3. And so you look at them, they play Tulsa, like I mentioned, who's a ranked team. If they go out there and they blow out Tulsa, Cincinnati, the reason they're ranked number 8 is because they have done what they're supposed to do. The only problem is, if you have Notre Dame and Clemson trading wins and stuff like that, you can't compete with that. And you're not going to put Ohio State under these teams because they're undefeated and they've blown out opponents. And the only team they didn't blow out was Indiana, who's a good team, clearly. And then you have Texas A&M, who their only loss is to Alabama, and everybody else they played, they've beaten, and they've also beaten Florida. So, yeah, I think if you just look at the statistics, Cincinnati has the best chance. And if Ohio State does lose and Texas A&M has a real bad win or a loss to Tennessee, and Notre Dame gets killed by Clemson, maybe, right? I'll give Cincinnati a chance because Ohio State can lose to Northwestern. Notre Dame can get blown out by Clemson, and Texas A&M can lose to Tennessee. They probably won't, but they can. So maybe there's a chance for Cincinnati. I don't know, but we'll just see.
Here's I got 2 things to say. One thing about what you were just saying, and I gotta regress and go back about something else really quick. Here's the thing about all 3 of those teams. We were just talking about USC, Coastal Carolina, Cincinnati. You know what it is for me as well, and maybe it's just me, and I could be wrong, but it's just the way I feel. There's no consistency year in and year out. Now, Coastal Carolina, to be dead honest with you, before this season, I didn't even know they had a football team. So congratulations to them for finally putting themselves on the map. But I want to see Coastal Carolina do the same thing next year. And I want to see them kind of build and have multiple good seasons. Like, obviously, we know Alabama, the history there, Clemson, we know those teams, right? And I think sometimes those teams get the benefit of the doubt just because year in, year out, they're always in the hunt, always in contention. USC hasn't been good for years. Cincinnati has hovered around the teens and been in the 20s as far as the rankings. But Cincinnati, really, this is one of the first years that they've been in the top 10, and we are this far into the season. So you're right. I don't disagree, or I can't really argue with everything that you said about Cincinnati, but I want to see them consistently be ranked in the top 10 for a couple years. I don't like, especially in college football, I don't like these Cinderella 1-year wonders. It doesn't work in college football. In college basketball, it might be able to work a little bit more because you can have a superstar, and that one superstar can elevate your entire team. In football, it is a collective 11 man on offense, 11 man on defense, and you need everyone to play well, including special teams. So I want to see consistency kind of on a year in, year out basis from these teams. And I think they can start to build a little more credibility with the college football playoff committee. And then I think the committee, next year, the year after, can say, all right, Coastal Carolina, they've gone undefeated, or they've only had 1 or 2 losses in the last 3 years. We need to start giving them a little more respect. But when it's you only have 1 year of being really good, I think that plays a little bit of a factor into more than likely why these teams aren't going to get that benefit of the doubt and aren't going to get in. And then second thing I wanted to mention, going back to Notre Dame and Clemson, which I wanted to mention when we were actually talking about that game exclusively, but I forgot. Do you see an issue at all? Because Notre Dame's defensive coordinator, Clark Lee, just accepted the head coaching job at Vanderbilt. Now, you would say, obviously he's not going to take that job until the end of the season, whenever Notre Dame season ends. But here's the thing, Nick. This Wednesday, which would be tomorrow, December 16th, is the early recruiting day for college football. And as the new head coach, I would assume that he would, want to be involved. Obviously, he's behind the curve, but you want to be out there recruiting and talking to coaching players. So I don't know if 100% of his focus is going to be on Clemson, because he's now the new head coach, and he's now also got to get to recruiting, which opens tomorrow. I mean, do you see? Am I completely out there with that, or do you see any type of potential conflict from himself, from the coach's perspective?
I'll say this. I mean, clearly there's a conflict, but I think if you're the defensive coordinator who's getting this job, you look at it as like, okay, what's a better way to show how good of a coach I am than beating Clemson, right? And I assume he's on the phone. I assume a guy like Brian Kelly is saying, hey, go ahead and do your thing. Just be ready for the game. Right? Don't miss any of the meetings. Don't miss any of this. But you have to take a couple phone calls with some recruits for Vanderbilt. You're fine. Go ahead. I'll allow you some time, right? Because Brian Kelly seems like a good guy in that point. And I think also the fact that they have beaten Clemson this season, they already have played them, there's a little bit less preparation to involve, right? Because you already have seen this team, and it's more of just rehashing what you did wrong and fixing your mistakes instead of, oh my God, we're playing Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne. What are we going to do? I think
they are playing Trevor Lawrence for the first time.
But again, I'm just saying, there's tape on Trevor Lawrence. There's big game tape, and also there's, the Clemson scheme. So I do think this is the best case scenario. But yeah, Jared, I didn't know that. And that definitely makes it think like, okay, it's just bad timing, right? Maybe just announce it. I can't blame Vanderbilt either, because Vanderbilt wants it for the early size. I love it. I love college football. It's crazy, right? It's crazy. I will say one more thing about these teams and stuff like that. We're not going to be able to get to our last topic, so I'll just finish off the podcast with this. You look at USC, again, I blame the Pac-12 for the majority of this problem that USC is not going to get in, because they screwed their season over, and they screwed USC over. Now, USC, they could have beat U of A by a lot. They could have beat UCLA by a lot. They could have blown out every opponent they had. But to be honest, they're playing a 5-game season, and they're not prepared. And their first game of the season was at 9 a.m. And so they kind of got thrown behind this. So I'm going to blame the Pac-12 a lot for USC. Because remember, Jared, they scheduled Alabama to start the season. And because of COVID, it got thrown out the door. So USC didn't do anything wrong here. They just didn't play up to their ability. But I just don't think with the way the season manifested that you can blame really any Pac-12 team for not playing up to their ability this season. So I'm going to blame the Pac-12 for that one. With Coastal Carolina and Cincinnati, I agree, Jared. They need to be more consistent and schedule opponents. Jared, what state is Cincinnati in?
Cincinnati, Ohio.
Oh, they're in Ohio. And what big-time team plays in Ohio?
Whew. Yeah, that'd be the Ohio State.
The Ohio State Buckeyes, right? Cincinnati, schedule Ohio State. will take you seriously. Coastal Carolina. Now they're the new dog on the block here. They're a new neighbor. What states are they based in? Because I actually don't know what state Coastal Carolina is based in, but what group of states are they based in?
Well, they're South Carolina, North Carolina. They're one of the Carolinas.
Jared, who plays in North Carolina? The Clemson.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah. For a second there, I forgot where Clemson was geographically.
Jared, you have Clemson, you have North Carolina, right? There's things these teams could do to improve their schedule, like USC did, right? USC plays Pac-12. They go, okay, let's play Alabama. We play Alabama. We lose by 3 or we beat them. Then we know we have a better chance. If you're Cincinnati and you're Coastal Carolina, yes, you are going to have to beat your Tulsas. You're going to have to beat your UCFs. But you're also going to have to compete and possibly beat Ohio State or Clemson or North Carolina or South Carolina or somebody, you know what I'm saying, or Kentucky, because Kentucky's ready. Like, they need to play legitimate teams. I just go, why not play the best? Why not play Ohio State? Why not play Clemson? Because why leave any doubt? If you beat Clemson or Ohio State, you're in, right? And you're undefeated.
Right.
You're one of the teams. So that's at least what I would say these teams to do. USC, again, I think you look at next year and you go, okay, well, they'll have a chance next year. Whoever their quarterback is, whatever, they'll have a lot of those receivers left. Their team just seems to be getting a little bit better and better, even though their recruiting classes have been terrible the last few years. But that's my advice to those teams. Go out and schedule the same teams in your state. It's not difficult travel, and that team will be more than willing to take a 40-mile bus ride to destroy you, or at least try to. That's at least what I'm going to say.
Yeah, and listen, for those schools now, Cincinnati is obviously a Division I big name program, right? They've done some things in their past, but for these smaller schools, they get some big chunk of money. Like, they'll get like $300,000-$400,000 to go travel and get their ass kicked by a Clemson, by a Michigan, by a big time school, right? So you're more than likely going to lose, and it's going to be by a lot. But as a school, you're going to get a lot of money back, which you can then put into your program, whether it's recruiting or scholarships or, strength program, whatever it is. So there's a reason why not only do these big name schools, typically get a tune-up game to start the season, but there's also a reason why these small name schools take these games, and so that they can get money to put back into their program.
Yeah, because it works, and then if they can beat them, it's a win-win, right? But yeah, so that's it in this podcast, guys. We'll be back next week talking more NFL. We'll be definitely talking next week about the college football selection. I believe they're going to be selecting it Sunday. So, Jared, we'll know the Final Four. We'll know what the college football playoff will be by the time we record next. So we will definitely dive into that. We will also get into, if it's still news, what we're going to talk about today. That's the Cleveland Indians changing their name. I could say the Cleveland Indians because they're still the Cleveland Indians this season. We will get into that next week, and we'll get into a lot more. The NBA starts next week, so we have a huge show next week, and we went long this week. I don't know how the hell we're going to record next week and get all of it in time, but this has been the Cover 2 podcast for this week. Once again, I'm Nick Nenad.
And I'm Jared Smith.
And we'll see you with a hell of a lot of good sports talk next week. See you guys.